Hey guys, Robert Ball, the author of Asleep Drifting, Book 1. And here we are, the first chapter of Birth, as promised, so let's get to it. November 1st, 2007, the day I reached an ultimate fork in the road. Up to that point, I had experienced many metaphoric births and subsequent deaths. I was looking down the barrel of oblivion. Little did I know my lowest point promised an awakening beyond my wildest dreams. That day I reflected upon everything of my existence. I had to. This unforgiving fork I faced had two choices, of course. I could continue down the same self-destructive road, which would land me in my final resting place, or travel the more challenging path filled with trepidation from the unknown. As if my situation wasn't bad enough, Brandon, my son, after working at my mortgage office, had decided to head back to Portland, Oregon, but not before leaving me a letter while I lay passed out in my bedroom. He wrote, "Dear Father, I love you so much. All I ever wanted was to have you there for my sister and me. You have so much potential, but you must stay focused. I think you're at an age where you must weigh what's more important, drugs and alcohol or your health. It would kill me to see something like alcohol take your life. I would like you to start going back to AA meetings again and start getting back on the grind. Being down here these last 6 months has made me grow. Thank you for all the contributions you have made to me while I've been here. My prayers will always be there for you and my sisters, and I love you. I know you lost your father at a young age, but I don't want to lose mine. Know that if you need someone to talk to or just want to say, 'What's up?' I'm here for you no matter what. I hate seeing you when you're down because you're better than what circumstances you're in. I want to see you become as successful as ever this next year, and I'm rooting for you to bring home the trophy. I know this. I'm glad we've been together part of this year. Don't worry about the past. Focus on the future. The hell with drugs and alcohol that ruin your life. Don't let anything else take the wheel. From the bottom of my heart, I love you, Dad, unconditionally. To forgive and forget and move on is a beautiful thing. I hold nothing against you but this. Don't let the juice, alcohol, and the go fast cocaine ruin your success. I'll always be here for you. I love you, Pops, and my sister and I would be devastated if we lost you. Think of the future and all the possibilities. From your son, love, Brandon." Although it was moving, his thoughts didn't shake me from my sleepwalking. I wasn't ready to throw in the towel, but his letter planted a seed in my heart, and eventually, as my pain became intolerable, his beautiful words, they took hold and they grew. Interestingly enough, the path toward death seemed more familiar. I began drinking alcohol during childhood and started using heavy drugs in my late teens. Yet at times, I lived an extraordinary life. I figured a premature death at 45 couldn't be that bad, as I found myself at the last house on the block. Every opportunity had run dry. I felt I had no options. Here I was. I worked tirelessly at my mortgage company, building to secure my future. I was on top of my game, doing everything possible. My life at least prospered financially. Then overnight, the mortgage market went into a free fall, taking me down with it. Bleakness gripped me and wouldn't let go. On a cold, gloomy midwinter night in Long Beach, California, I sat freezing at a dining room table in front of a flickering candle. My electricity had been cut off. I was watching cold plumes of breath come out of me as if I were smoking a cigar. Thinking back, I only had one choice. That was to save my life. Had I continued down my path, I would have been dead inside a year, and I knew this with every fiber of my being. My routine drinking started at 13, although I took my first drink at 5 and went nonstop through my 45th birthday. Roughly in that time frame, I downed somewhere around 85,000 beers. I wouldn't even count how many mixed drinks I consumed, including bottles of hard liquor. If I had to figure out how much I had spent on drugs and alcohol, it'd make me sicker than my worst hangover. But if I had to guess that number, I'm sure it would easily add up to over $250,000. November 2nd, 2007 was my last day as a drunk and drug addict, which mercifully ended in solitude. The day before, I polished off a 40-ounce bottle of Mickey's Big Mouth had another one at the ready, and smoked several enormous joints after a half pint of 151 Bacardi I muscled down earlier in the day. My mind, body, and spirit were so beaten up, I finally admitted defeat. All my finances had left town with the mortgage collapse. After countless desperate attempts to break the terrible habit of excessive drinking and drug use, I sat in that deserted house listless. I knew deep in my heart the next day would and had to be different. My very life depended on it. The funny thing about us human beings, we never do anything good for ourselves until we're down to our last chance. We do not see that the best is yet to come because we're caught up in the worst we think we are. We are lost because we're asleep. I needed to wake up, stay up, and be alert. Nothing but nothing meant more to me at that moment. I believe our souls are most accessible when we're vulnerable. I was broken and stood on the ledge of life. I had a choice. I could jump into the abyss and be lost forever, or access a divine providence to manifest within me. So I chose the latter. With every ounce of my being, I summoned my Creator to take whatever had me bound and powerless and replace it with the person I was born to be. Thus I began a journey toward creating and bringing these words to life. The early morning winter sun touched my face through the bedroom window. Peering about the room, I had the sad realization everything was going up in smoke. The bank was foreclosing on a home in which I had invested, then failed to resell, spending $100,000. Didn't stop there. I had an extortion type lien from child support for $90,000 from my son's mother, and another $50,000 in credit card and personal loan debt. I was $240,000 in the hole with the defunct mortgage business. As I lay there in bed, none of that seemed to matter. The emptiness I endured the night before and the hangover that should have been there had vanished. I felt welcomed. Still tired, I began daydreaming about my natural birth. In a copacetic sphere, I found myself in a great wonderment, a place of peace with a true sense of being, a cozy weightlessness. Instantly, I felt safe, incredibly sensitive to my surroundings, encased in a gel-like substance, a cocoon, warm, full of love. I felt a tremendous reverberating power, neither with the need or desire for anything. I was complete, no worries, no need for food, time was irrelevant. An overwhelming sense of tranquility and total awareness had washed over me. It was beautiful. At that moment, everything became clear. I was so familiar with the process. I knew that I'd be born and the time was at hand to exit this place of understanding. Soon I'd be jettisoned into a world of utter chaos to fend for myself. On October 27, 1962, I was born in the small town of Espanola, New Mexico, to Lucinda Morfin and Alejandro Pablo. Soon thereafter, my father bailed to Utah. My mother moved us north to the twin farming communities of Guyana and Coyote to live with my grandmother Benny and my mother's sister, my Aunt Betty. The two adjoining towns are nestled alongside the glorious mountains of New Mexico. The majestic horizons stood as a spectacular backdrop framed above the beautiful plateaus and valleys. Perfect trees bordered the peaks of the skies, portraying brilliant bands of colors between the clouds. The light they cast on the pastures was unspeakable, as if painted by a celestial being. When the sunsets arrived, shades of orange, gold, hues of red sprayed across the bright horizons. What a slice of heaven! As a child, I marveled at nature's breathtaking canvas. The sunsets never disappointed. I'm reminded that it put to rest any previous worries when the day ended. It enabled me to have a peaceful, uninterrupted slumber. Even at such a young age, I captured the beauty in creation and all that it stood for. We lived in a converted adobe home, which was once a schoolhouse. The structure was one big room with a single counter and a basin along the wall, accompanied by a small refrigerator and a wood-burning stove, which formed a makeshift kitchen. Along an adjacent wall were small beds and a chest for our clothes. Whenever I ventured into the wondrous fields and the plateau shadows, I always wore my favorite red hoodie. During the cold season, I helped the women carry tin buckets filled with snow to melt for water. I'd run through the field of crops we grew and harvested. It was magical. My grandmother sowed corn, radishes, lettuce, carrots, spinach, and such. It was a humbling experience to help my family care for and pick the graciously prepared food for our advancement and nourishment. It was a feeling of unconditional love, security, and peace. A gravel pathway led from our shelter to the main road where I would wait for a yellow bus to bring Aunt Betty home from high school. I adored her. She was 5 years younger than my mother, but it felt like she was my older sister. Suddenly, Lucinda moved us back to Espanola. Over time, moving became a way of life. We mimicked vagabonds. From when I was 3 to 6 years old, Lucinda frequently struck out on her own to bars or dates she had. I felt isolated, especially from Grandma Benny and Aunt Betty. In the second grade, Lucinda threatened me physically when I came home from school with unsatisfactory grades. My grandmother jumped into the middle of the conflict and offered to beat the shit out of her if she touched me. This early experience was just one of many, many vivid ways she displayed protection. Unfortunately, that's when I took the brunt of Lucinda's abuse. So there you have it, the first chapter, Birth, and the thing that stood out to me was Robert's letter, my son's letter, encouraging me to go back to AA meetings. And I had, at that point, I had 3 DUIs, and I probably should have had 50. That was crazy. So, I'd go to the AA meetings, which court appointed, of course. And I had, you'd get a 30-day chip, for every, the 30 days of sobriety. It's a blue chip. And I had enough of those to fill a small auditorium with people holding up a 30-day chip. It's crazy. And one day I was with my sponsor, and he said, Robert, the thing you must understand is, AA has a 10% success rate. And I was like, what? I must have misheard him. And I go, it's a 90% failure rate? He goes, yeah, 10% success rate. He tried to keep it in the positive. And I go, no, hell no. This is crazy. I'm not going to be able to do this. If I really want to kind of, So it was kind of crazy. And, Bruce Lee, he says, you must accept the fact that there is no help but self-help. I cannot tell you how to gain freedom, for freedom exists within you. True. And, we're born alone, we're going to die alone. That's the hard, cold fact of this world that we live in. That's it. So, it was one of these situations where I didn't have a father, and my mother was on the doorstep of committing the worst type of betrayal anyone could commit on their own child. So, this book's a roller coaster. There are some very funny parts in there, I guarantee you. And there's also some very thought-provoking parts as well as the dark moments. So please hit the like button, subscribe. And it's my privilege to be here with you guys and to spend, time, with my life. And I'm sure you'll see a lot of parallels there, probably. So I just want to wish you a really great day and thank you for joining. And stay tuned for chapter 2. Have a great day.